I'm Sophie. It's still vivid in my mind, that unforgettable day at my wedding. The barn was filled with 200 guests, yet I walked down the aisle all by myself. My mother had RSVP'd no for the entire family, and my father called to say he wouldn't walk me down the aisle to my fiancé, Jake, an electrician. My sister, Lily, texted me, "You're embarrassing us." But I didn't care. I was marrying the man I loved. Then, at exactly 3:14 in the afternoon, something happened that none of the guests expected. A door at the back of the venue opened, and every single person turned around. A woman in a blue dress walked towards us. Jake dropped to his knees right there at the altar. He whispered one word, and by midnight, 14 million people had watched that moment. Let me take you back to the beginning. I grew up in a small town in California. My parents, Tom and Carol, lived in a modest 2-story house. My father worked as a mechanic at a local garage, and my mother was a part-time receptionist at a beauty salon. They always tried to keep up appearances, but money was often tight. My sister, Lily, was 5 years older than me. She was outgoing, popular, and always the center of attention. She married a lawyer, Alex, and my mother threw her a $120,000 wedding at a fancy country club. There were roses flown in from France, a live orchestra, and my father gave a 15-minute speech. I was a bridesmaid, but I was always in the background. I was the quiet one, the one who studied hard. I paid for my nursing degree with scholarships and part-time jobs at a local hospital. I got my nurse practitioner certification at 29 and bought my own apartment at 31. My mother never once asked how I managed it. The only comment she made about my career was at Lily's bridal shower. She leaned in and said, "Your sister married well. You should find someone with a better future." I just smiled and said nothing. One Tuesday in October, Jake walked into the clinic where I worked. The fuse panel in one of the examination rooms had been acting up for weeks. Our office manager finally called an electrician. A red truck pulled into the parking lot at 8 o'clock in the morning. It was Jake's company, Spark Electric. He was 34, tall and muscular. His hands were rough and calloused from years of work. He had a kind smile and a gentle voice. He fixed the panel in just over an hour. Then he noticed that the wiring in the break room was also a problem and fixed it without charging. I brought him coffee at 9:30. He was sitting on the floor, testing a circuit with an old-fashioned meter. "Do you love your job?" I asked. "Every single day," he replied. "That's why I respect it." I was a bit taken aback. Most people complain about their jobs, but he was so proud of what he did. He finished at 11:30, packed his tools neatly into his toolbox, and left his business card on the counter. I kept that card in my drawer for 4 weeks. I told myself it was for future electrical issues, but deep down, I knew it was because of him. On the 28th day, I called him. Not about the wiring, but just to talk. "This is Sophie from the clinic," I said. There was a pause, and then he said, "I was hoping you'd call." 4 months later, I took Jake to my parents' house for dinner. I knew it was a risk. Jake wore a clean button-down shirt and his best boots. He brought a bottle of wine. He held my hand in the driveway and said, "If they don't like me, it's their problem, not ours." My mother opened the door with a fake smile. At the table, she poured Jake just a little bit of wine and asked, "What does an electrician do all day?" Jake set his fork down and said, "I wire homes, offices, and factories. I make sure everything works safely." Lily laughed nervously, and Alex just stared at his plate. My father asked Jake how much he made. Jake didn't flinch. "I make enough to live a good life and take care of the people I love," he said. My father nodded, but my mother pressed her lips together. In the kitchen, while I was doing the dishes, Lily whispered to me, "He's cute, but Mom won't approve." I said, "She's already making up her mind." At the door, after Jake had thanked them and shaken my father's hand, my mother pulled me aside. She put her hand on my arm and said, "He seems nice, but he doesn't have a stable enough job." I looked at her hand and thought about the money she had spent on Lily's wedding. I just said, "Good night, Mom." Jake proposed to me on a Sunday at the beach. The sun was setting, and the sand was warm. He got down on one knee with a ring he had made himself. It was a copper ring with a small diamond in the middle. "Copper is strong and conducts electricity, just like our love," he said. I said yes before he could finish. I called my mother first. I didn't want her approval, but I wanted to give her a chance to be happy for me. The phone rang 5 times. She picked up. "Mom, Jake proposed," and I said yes, I told her. There was silence. I could hear the TV in the background. Then she said, "An electrician?" "Really?" That was it. No congratulations, no questions about the ring or the wedding date. My father didn't even get on the phone. Lily texted me 30 minutes later. "Congrats, I guess." "Mom's been crying," she wrote. I knew she wasn't crying because she was losing a daughter. She was crying because Jake didn't have a high-status job. I looked at the ring on my finger. It was simple but full of love, worth more than all the expensive jewelry my mother had ever bought. Jake was watching me from across the room. "Bad call?" he asked. "Expected call," I replied. He nodded. He had always been told he wasn't good enough, but he didn't let it bother him. We sent out 68 invitations. Jake and I designed them ourselves, using thick paper and black ink. We sat at the kitchen table on a Saturday and addressed each one by hand. Jake's handwriting was much neater than mine. 48 invitations went to Jake's side. His friends from the union, former clients, his old mentor, and his neighbors. 20 invitations went to my side, my parents, Lily and Alex, a few aunts and uncles, and some friends from nursing school. The responses from Jake's side started coming in right away. Almost everyone said yes. One of his old clients, Mr. Johnson, drove an hour to hand deliver his RSVP with a check for $300 for our honeymoon. But from my side, there was silence. Not a single RSVP, no phone calls, no texts. On the 18th day, at 10 o'clock at night, my phone buzzed. It was an email from my mother, BCC'd to all 22 people on my side of the guest list. "The family will not be attending," it said. No explanation, no apology. 3 days later, my father called. It was a Thursday, 7 o'clock in the evening. I was making dinner. Jake was in the living room. I saw my father's name on the screen and felt a knot in my stomach. I picked up the phone. "Sophie," he said. His voice sounded tired. "Your mother and I have talked. We won't walk you down the aisle to that electrician." I leaned against the counter. The water in the pot was boiling over. "Is this what Mom said, or what you think?" I asked. There was a long pause. "It's what we both decided," he said. I could hear my mother's voice in the background, saying, "Tell her it's not too late to change her mind." I took a deep breath and said, "I understand. I'll walk alone." Jake came into the kitchen and saw my red eyes. "Your dad called?" he asked. I nodded. "He said they won't come," I told him. He sat down and said, "Then we'll face it together." I said, "No, I'll walk alone. You'll be waiting for me at the altar." That night, we sat on the balcony. The air was cool and the stars were bright. Jake didn't try to make me feel better. He just sat beside me, holding my hand. "I've lived without a real family for a long time," he said. "I've learned to be strong. But you shouldn't have to go through this." I pulled my sweater closer and said, "Maybe I've been waiting for their approval for too long." He squeezed my hand and said, "I'll always be here for you." The next morning, I made a decision. There was a small wooden box under our bed. Jake always kept it there, but he never talked about it. One night, when he was asleep, I decided to open it. Inside, there were 3 old photographs. The first one showed a young woman holding a baby. The baby was Jake. The second photograph was of the same woman sitting on a porch, looking sad. The third was of the woman alone, standing in front of a house. Underneath the photographs was a letter. It was yellowed and creased. "My dear son," it read. "I'm so sorry I had to leave. I love you more than anything, but I had no choice. I hope you're safe and happy." The return address was in Seattle. I read the letter 3 times. Jake had kept it for 25 years. He never replied, and he never went to Seattle, but he never threw it away either. The next day, I called information in Seattle. The address was no longer valid. The woman, Jake's mother, had moved years ago. I sat at the kitchen table with my laptop and searched for her. After hours of looking, I found a website for a design firm. The owner was a woman in her late 50s, with silver hair and Jake's eyes. Her name was Emily. I wrote an email to her. It took me an hour to get the words right. I said, "My name is Sophie. I'm engaged to your son, Jake. I found your letter in a box under our bed." I pressed send at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. At 5:30, my phone rang. It was a Seattle area code. I answered, and a woman's voice said, "Is Jake alive?" I said, "Yes, he's alive, healthy, and we're getting married." She started crying. "I've been looking for him for so long," she said. 2 days later, I flew to Seattle. I told Jake I was visiting a college friend. It was the first lie I ever told him. Emily and I met at a coffee shop. She was smaller than she looked in the photo. She was wearing a blue sweater, and her hands were shaking. She told me her story. She had married Jake's father when she was 20. He was a gambler and a drunk. When Jake was 8, she tried to leave with him. But Jake's father threatened to take Jake away if she left. So she had to leave Jake behind. She had been searching for him ever since. I showed her pictures of Jake on my phone. She held the phone with both hands and cried. "He looks just like his father, but his eyes are mine," she said. I asked her, "Would you come to the wedding?" She was quiet for a long time. "He might hate me," she said. I said, "He doesn't hate you. He's kept your letter for 25 years. She covered her face with her hands and said, "I gave him that box when he was a baby. It had his baby shoes inside." We talked for a long time. She agreed to come to the wedding. She would wear a blue dress and wait in the back room. When it was time, I would nod to Jake's friend, Mark, and he would open the door. 2 weeks before the wedding, my cousin, Sarah, sent me a screenshot of a group text from my mother. "If anyone in the family goes to Sophie's wedding to that foster kid, don't ever talk to me again," it said. My father had added a thumbs up emoji. I forwarded the screenshot to Jake. He called me 10 minutes later. "Foster kid," he said slowly. "That's what they're calling me. But it doesn't define me." I said, "In 2 weeks, you'll meet your mother, and she'll call you her son." The rehearsal dinner was on a Friday evening. The barn was beautiful. Jake's friends had decorated it with fairy lights and wildflowers. The left side of the aisle was full of Jake's guests, but the right side had only 5 people, my colleagues and 2 friends from nursing school. There were 15 empty chairs. Jake stood at the end of the aisle, looking at those empty chairs. His jaw tightened. "They're missing out," he said. I nodded. Mark came over and said, "Let me move some chairs from Jake's side to fill it in." I shook my head. "Leave them empty. Let everyone see." That night, after Jake fell asleep, I drove to the hotel where Emily was staying. She was wearing the blue dress. "Are you ready?" I asked. "I've been ready for 25 years, she replied. I explained the plan one more time. She held the blue blanket that she had wrapped Jake in when he was a baby. On the day of the wedding, I got dressed in a simple white dress. I bought it at a second-hand store for $250. It fit me perfectly. My colleagues zipped up the back and put a flower in my hair. My phone buzzed. It was a text from my mother with a picture of Lily's wedding. The caption said, "This is what a real wedding looks like." I deleted it without a second thought. Another text from Lily said, "It's not too late to cancel." I didn't reply. At 3 o'clock in the afternoon, the music started. I walked out of the room and stood at the entrance of the barn. The aisle was long, and there were wildflowers at every row. I took a deep breath and started walking. I didn't look at the empty chairs. I looked straight ahead at Jake. His eyes were wet, and he was smiling. I reached the altar, and Jake took my hand. "You came alone," he whispered. "I came to you," I replied. The officiant started speaking, but I wasn't really listening. I was waiting for the moment. Then I looked at Mark and nodded. He stood up and walked to the back of the barn. He opened the door. A woman in a blue dress walked in. All the guests turned around. Jake's grip on my hand changed. He looked past me, at the woman. His face changed. It was like he could feel a connection he hadn't felt in 25 years. Emily took a few steps forward. Jake's knees buckled, and he fell to the ground. He tried to say, "Mom," but the word got stuck in his throat. Emily knelt down beside him and put her hands on his face. "My sweet boy," she said. The whole room was silent, and then people started crying. Jake held Emily tightly. He said, "I thought you left me on purpose." She said, "I was forced to. But I never stopped loving you." The officiant stepped forward and asked, "Should we continue?" Jake wiped his tears and stood up. He helped Emily to her feet. "Yes," he said. "Let's finish this." After the ceremony, a guest named Tom, who was a videographer, posted the video online. By midnight, it had 2 million views. At the reception, Emily sat at the head table, in the seat that would have been my mother's. Jake and Emily talked for hours. They showed each other pictures and shared stories. The next morning, my father came to my door. He looked tired and sad. "I watched the video," he said. "I should have been there. I should have walked you down the aisle." I said, "You chose not to. But I'm not angry. I'm just done waiting for your approval." He nodded and left. 1 week after the wedding, the video had 8 million views. A local news station ran a story about it. People started reaching out to us. 47 of the people who had received our invitations sent messages saying they were sorry they didn't come. Lily called me one day. Her voice was different. "I saw the video. Mom is not doing well. She's alone now. She chose Alex for me, too. I didn't really love him." I listened quietly. She said, "I was the embarrassment, not you." As for Jake and Emily, they talk on the phone every week. He visited her in Seattle last month, and she's coming for Christmas. The wooden box now sits on our bookshelf, with the baby shoes, the photographs, and the letter inside. When people ask me if I've forgiven my mother, I say, when she's ready to apologize sincerely, I'll listen. Until then, the door is closed. I walked down that aisle alone, but I walked out of that barn with more family than I ever thought possible.